Hi, I'm Stephanie, and this is HopeLit. This is a space for conversations about hope and faith and what it looks like to live as light in a world that feels pretty heavy. I'm glad you're here. Last week, we talked about the idea that faith was never meant to feel heavy, that at its heart, faith is all about love for God, love for people. This week, I want to stay with that idea and go a little deeper, because there's a moment in the life of Jesus where someone asks him a question that gets right to the center of everything. If you could reduce everything to just one thing, imagine you've spent your whole life trying to be a good or a moral person. Or imagine that you're a person of faith and you've spent your whole life trying to live faithfully, studying scriptures, learning the commandments, doing your best to get it all right. And then you finally ask the question that's been quietly forming under the surface. If everything comes down to one thing, then what is it? This is essentially the question that a Jewish teacher asked Jesus. It wasn't a trick question, and it's not cynical. It's the kind of question that forms from sincerity, from someone who genuinely loves God and wants to make sure they haven't missed the heart of it all. Jesus answers from inside the tradition. What I love about Jesus' response is how grounded it is. It doesn't dismiss the law, and it doesn't spiritualize obedience away. Jesus answers as a faithful Jew, rooted in Scripture. He begins with words every faithful Jewish person knew by heart, the Shema, affirming the oneness of God. And then he says that the greatest commandment is to love God fully, with your whole self, not just from straight obedience, not just emotionally, but with your will, your understanding, your lived life. And then Jesus says something remarkable. Everything else hangs on these two. Let me repeat that. Everything else hangs on loving God and loving your neighbor as yourself. Everything else hangs on these two. You see, love is the center, not the checklist. This is where faith gets reframed. Love is not one commandment among many. It is the center of gravity. Every practice, every command, every act of obedience is meant to move us in one of two directions: toward a deeper love of God and toward a deeper love of one another. Love God, love your neighbor, love people. Faith stops being about keeping score and starts being about alignment, about becoming the kind of person whose life naturally moves towards love. It's not either or, but both. Jesus doesn't allow us to separate these two loves. Loving God without loving people becomes abstract, and loving people without loving God eventually becomes empty. It runs dry. They belong together. And this is where faith becomes visible. Because love for God shows up in how we speak to one another, how patient we are when we're tired, how we listen instead of react, how we choose kindness when it would be easier to withdraw. This is where belief becomes embodied, when love becomes light. Later, Jesus tells his followers that they are the light of the world. And light is never meant to exist for itself. Light is meant to warm, to guide, to make things visible. When love becomes the center of our faith, obedience stops feeling heavy and it starts feeling luminous. Love turns commandments into light, and a life shaped by love becomes in itself a mitzvah, a living invitation to hope. So I want to pause here just for a moment for the HopeLit question this week. Carefully consider, and you don't have to answer out loud. Just let this question rest with you. Where is God inviting you to love more intentionally right now? Him or the people around you? And what is one small, honest way that you could respond this week without feeling exhausted or overwhelmed? For me, what continually comes up is patience, especially when I'm tired, especially when I'm feeling overwhelmed, especially when I am focusing more on the circumstances than on the person, especially in small moments that don't feel very spiritual, but they are. Why this matters right now. Our world is not lacking in opinions or noise. What it's lacking is love that endures, not perfection, not performance, but presence. The love that shows up quietly and consistently. This is the invitation that Jesus places before us. And when we accept it, our lives become light. If this conversation encouraged you, I'd love to hear from you. Take a moment to answer the HopeLit question in the comments or share what stood out to you today. If you're finding this space meaningful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to HopeLit. It really helps the channel grow, and that helps more people find a little light when they need it. Until next time, thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing love and light.